Today in my series about curiosity interviews, I'm interviewing, not by accident, my favorite company, nexxworks, and as such my favorite CEO. Sorry for all other CEOs, Julie. But I'm not going to introduce you, Julie. I'm going to ask you, who is Julie? What do we need to know?
I'm CEO of nexxworks. I'm 32 years old, married, 5 years tomorrow, so reason to celebrate. I have a son since the beginning of the year.
Yeah, what a year it was. Yeah.
I have a lot to tell him, I think, when he grows up. So exciting life, and I love people. I love the world. I miss the world, I guess, these days. I love friends. I love cooking, and I love football as well, soccer.
You love, oh, I didn't know that.
You did know that.
I didn't know that. No, I didn't.
So yeah, I guess that's me.
Okay. If you would pick out one element that you say, okay, this is really me. This is one of my values. This is one of my characteristics I'm really proud of. What would that be?
I think the word people will definitely stick in anything I do. If I talk about the world, it's also because you meet different people, different cultures. So I think that's fascinating. And I noticed as well this year, like not being around a lot of new people or just not being in the office, or it's just really hard on me. So
you miss people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
What is it about people? Is it the serendipity of people, the unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, what we do at nexxworks, I call it creative collisions. And that's also what you have with people. They give you inspiration, they give you ideas, stories, and you connect the dots afterwards. And if I have to connect them myself, that doesn't really work.
Connecting the dots. I love the bridge, because the next question would be, okay, we've been talking about you, but you're the CEO of nexxworks. I guess that many people know nexxworks, but the next question is, what do you exactly do, you guys? What is nexxworks? What do you do?
I should revert the question.
Yeah.
No, it's a difficult thing to explain because it's very intangible.
That's why I'm asking you and not asking.
No, absolutely. It's a very intangible thing, and basically we bring inspiration and connection to people. Those collisions, they're never the same, but we believe that. Listening and hearing other stories and connecting to other people and being curious about what they are experiencing can help people and companies to make their stories bigger and just make them richer. And very, very specifically, we are the curator. We bring those stories together. So when we are able to travel, we travel the world to bring those people and those companies, those experts together so that they can exchange. And I think these days, of course, the world hasn't been further apart, I guess, but in the same time, everybody's connecting digitally and exchanging those stories as well. So really the need to connect and the need to have inspiration from other stories, the storytelling, everybody still needs that.
Yep.
So that's what we do.
Yep. We'll come back to these devastating times, and I guess the impact on the business was pretty clear and pretty
obvious.
Impactful and pretty obvious, okay. But first of all, I mean, what nexxworks does, there's other companies that say more or less we do the same. What makes you different?
That's an assumption that they do the same.
They assume
they do the same,
yeah,
but
we know better, do we?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few elements. I think the curation of those stories is quite unique. So it's not always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's always really personalized to the issue or the question at hand or the topic or the company. If you're in supply chain, it's a different story than you're in marketing. If you're in Asia and you have a leadership team that needs to work with US, it's a different situation than you have a change team in Belgium, for example, that has a challenge. So we really match the need of the company and the need of the target group with the question at hand. And then we try to find the right conversations. And in the execution, and I mean, you do that all the time as well when you work with us, is curating and moderating that conversation, voicing the questions that are not asked, is, I think, what we do really different than other people, because we do it in a really human, simple, down-to-earth way as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other differences, you don't have a formula, you don't have a silver bullet, you don't come in and this is a formula, and we kind of, we try to get you into that formula. That's not what you do you?
No, because I don't think it exists. And I think that's indeed what we do different than a lot of other companies, I think. And I mean, I don't blame them. It's easy to simplify.
It's easy to come up with a solution. It's easy to come up with a silver bullet. This is a silver bullet.
It makes things simple. It makes things easy to implement. And I think in a way, and for certain things, it works. But for me, you always have to combine it with having a lot of questions as well. I always say, like, we will give you more questions than answers. And of course, one day you need answers, and there's enough companies that help you with that. But I think you have to look for the right questions.
That's what you do. You try to create, or not try, you create a large toolbox of solutions and concepts and silver bullets, but you adapt them to, this is your specific context, this is your specific question, this is your specific issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You used to do that in a specific way before this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask you, were you affected by the virus? You were. How did it affect you, and how did the company react to that? Because I think that companies can learn from the resilience that the company has shown.
Many different aspects. So yeah, I mean, one day you get up and you hear that travel won't be possible anymore, and even locally that people can get together. So basically 100% of what we were doing was, or maybe 99% was bringing people together and travel with them all over the world.
So all of a sudden it was from 100% to
what
zero
are we gonna do
in a
this
couple
year?
of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So not easy. But I think we have spent a lot of time at nexxworks the recent years to really define what do we do. And we are not a travel agency traveling to China. We are inspiring and connecting people, and we just continue doing that. Our customers also came to us like, hey, our teams our leaders are asking for the same inspiration, and we know you cannot go there right now, but can't we do something else as an alternative? So we basically started shifting those programs to the virtual world, and then many ideas arise.
Can you elaborate on that? Can you give us a couple of examples of the alternatives? I don't like to call it alternatives because they're not alternatives anymore. It's just
they're complementary.
New building blocks. Yeah,
they're complementary. Absolutely. There are different dynamics. I mean, one is, for example, we're being asked by global companies, for example, to inspire them on how can we be more resilient, how can we be more adaptable in our strategies with our teams, in our way of working. So what we did is basically organize deep dives into those topics, and again, bring experts, bring companies that have the same issues or have experience with that. We brought them together into a conversation, and they exchanged. So the expert basically online shares experiences, just like they do in the physical world. But then you have a lot of room for Q&A, and I think we were just talking about it as well, like in the virtual setup, people are in a way more respectful to each other as well in letting them speak and making sure that everybody speaks. And you see that peace and pace also in those types of programs. But one of the big advantages, I think, is you don't have to travel anymore. I mean, it's a downside as well because it's less intense. But when another example, for example, is a customer and they are working on a continuous learning culture in their organization. So there's really a team working on that from home, obviously. They have weekly sprints. And each week, we also have an inspiration session with them. So their own thinking process gets richer every week because they have that interaction with somebody else.
Okay.
And the fact that you can do that during a month, I mean, we were not able to do that before because you cannot travel somewhere, come back, and then travel again. And so in that sense, it's more pragmatic.
But you're absolutely right that the interaction with your customers has changed because of this digital environment. I have exactly the same. When you do a keynote, it's one to many. You're on stage and people are listening. And then sometimes you do a Q&A, but you don't do a Q&A. I mean, there's 2 questions that come out of the audience. That's on the Q&A. When you do it in a digital environment, that's a real Q&A. And I can tell you, it's more interesting for us keynote speakers as well, because the Q&A is far more interactive, and it keeps you sharp as a keynote speaker as well. I fully agree. Yeah.
I can, and also what you have is people can consult the content up front. So they have a little thinking time. They can think about the questions they have. For example, you send a video first, and then the full session is about questions. So that's nice.
But what you're actually saying is you've developed a couple of new building blocks that you're going to use whatever happens next. If we go back to traveling, you're not going to skip those building blocks. Those building blocks will become part of the offering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the big differences, what COVID has changed as well, is the acceptance of everybody to do so. I mean, we could propose this digital virtual way in the past as well. One of the big questions always was like, okay, this is such a rich exchange. How can we stay in touch? And everybody tried, but it's like going on a camp, and then, I mean, everybody goes back to its box. But the fact that everybody accepts digital, virtual as a means to an end, as a way of conversation, I think that's very rich.
What type of companies do you want to knock on your door?
I'm not difficult, but I think companies that don't have an openness to ask questions to themselves or about the world, they don't knock on our door. So they have to be curious. They have to be willing to be vulnerable, willing to...
And then it can be whatever company. It's not one segment or limited number of segments.
We've been working for the largest company in the world, and we're working for one-man businesses. And I think because...
And everything in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what you said is it's always tailor-made. And of course, those questions are different for large companies.
So it's more about the mindset. If the mindset is an open-minded mindset, a curious mindset, then it's the type of companies, please come and knock on your door, because you can help them.
You know, Heather McGowan, one of our collective thought leaders as well, and she also talks about learning. Learning is the new reason why you go to work. And I think, again, curiosity, the willingness to learn, and you learn on the job, you know, you learn in the things that you do. That's also why we don't do reporting, but we do experiences, because it's in those experiences that you are learning.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about learning, there's this holy trinity that companies want to learn about. It's the holy trinity of big data on one hand, artificial intelligence on the other hand, and automatization, robotization as the third element. What's your point of view? What's nexxworks' point of view? And can you help customers in helping them out with that holy trinity? Because you all know they have to do something with it, but most cases, people don't exactly know where to start, how to start.
I think, again, there's no silver bullet. That's why it's just difficult as well. What we've seen in terms of attitude towards technology and big data and the holy trinity, as you mentioned it, I think 4 years ago, it was about awareness. People had no clue what's going on, what's even possible. I think now they are getting started. So of course, those topics have been part of our stories all the time, because they're such an interesting source of learning, as you mentioned. So we've always been advocating it. And I think that shifting to execution, now you see companies experimenting and seeing, okay, where do we have to start? But still, it's very hard to do. And I think there we come in again as a sort of sounding board. Don't do it on your own, but learn from others. And we set up
again,
those
the
connections.
creative function that you create in between companies.
How have you handled the issue? And people learn from that experience. So it's really, those are stories we tell a lot. And I think from a nexxworks point of view, I can only say it is hard. We can automate way more than we do right now, but I mean, you learn every day and you take step by step, I think, and at least we are aware of the options. So,
okay. I've got 2 very difficult questions. The first difficult question is one about nexxworks. And I ask the same question time and time again to every company I meet, is what would customers miss if you were not there? For me, that's the ultimate why question. What would they miss?
Stories and experiences, that's the boring answer, I would say. But I call it the spice of life. I think what you have these days, and I mean of work as well, is, I mean, of course things are efficient right now in a digital way, but I mean, it's boring as well. You want to get out, you want to stumble off a bus, or you want to stress out because the meeting room might be too small, and hey, you meet a
You've
top...
been there as well.
yeah, sure. And I mean, but also, I mean, being in a place like Silicon Valley or China, I mean, anywhere in the world, being there is so different. Smelling it, feeling it is so different. So I think we combine those experiences with our own style, you know. We don't take ourselves too seriously. We just make it a fun experience as well. And being
I love that you say that. It's a fun factor.
Yeah, absolutely. We are working on a new digital program actually that's going to be running continuously, and it's one of our design principles is we said it has to be a nice place to be. You have to have fun when joining us for a session there. Yeah.
Another thing that always has been striking me in this community, and I like to call it an ecosystem, I'll come back to ecosystems later, is what connects the ecosystem, the nexxworks ecosystem, is that fun factor, is that curiosity factor, is that inspiration factor. But I've always felt a warmth in between people like each other in the ecosystem.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mean, is it one of those, or because I agree with what you just said, it's all of those, and it's that curiosity and that.
It's also the openness.
Yeah, and the ambition. You know, people want to do things differently. You don't go and ask questions if you don't want to change and just do nothing at the end of the day. People are hungry.
And they find peers within the ecosystem.
Yeah, and they think bigger and bolder with them, so they get energy from that.
Okay. You know, I'm writing a new book on ecosystems. What's your point of view on ecosystems? Because everybody's talking about ecosystem. Everybody's got a different definition of ecosystems, and I'm looking for all types of definitions. So now I'm pretty curious about your definition of an ecosystem.
I was just about to say I'm not going to give a definition.
Okay,
But I mean, talking of nexxworks, I think we have been designed as an ecosystem. Only the world also has to be willing to be organized like that. So what we saw, for example, I mean, the network always wins. Exchange between two companies, that was just really, really hard. They didn't want to exchange anything with each other.
We've been trying to crack that nut for how many years? Yeah.
But it's changing.
Yeah.
I think now that mindset is more and more emerging. Now we get companies asking us, hey, find me 4 other companies where I can exchange with. So then I'm very enthusiastic, and I think we are still functioning as a moderator and a designer of those collisions and those moments. And I think in the future, if we mix that with data and technology, we can only increase the power of that network and let it become a real ecosystem that functions by itself as well. Yeah. So we do that in small initiatives and with a vision towards the future.
Now what nexxworks does is make the connections, be the creator and
bring people
together. From time
together.
to time, bring some vibes and some energy into the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, nice thought, by the way. You've been running programs on leadership as well. Have you seen a shift in type of leadership now because COVID-19 has been a speed course in a number of things. The most obvious is it's been a speed course in digitization of a number of things, but I think it's also been a dramatic shifting of the type of leadership that we need. Have you experienced that?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily about because of COVID. I think
no, it was already going on.
I left the corporate world because of the fact I didn't really like the. I mean, great people over there, great leadership, but I mean it's a system that is where it's designed on expertise. Or again, I'm a bigger fan of the curiosity, the let's ask questions together, so that vulnerable position of a leader if you don't have that today, I think it's becoming more and more difficult to be a leader these days. So you do see a shift, I think, of leaders who are daring to be vulnerable and others who are still struggling with that because of fear of change and things that might not happen. But I think that will be a key attribute going forward. And in a situation like COVID, people getting up and saying, hey, but I know how we will handle this because I've been here before, I'm the expert, and what are we going to do?
Nobody's been here
Nobody.
before. Yeah.
So if they haven't been vulnerable this year, I mean, then I don't know what's going to happen in the future as well. Yeah. So vulnerability is a big one. And I think storytelling is, I mean, because distance and information is everywhere. So as a leader, you do have to make sure that everybody's on board because it's difficult to make sense of everything that's happening. And I think that's a big role. You can have a vision, but you shouldn't require that everybody follows that, but you should have everybody happy and purposeful at the end of the day, that people go home and say, wow, I contributed to this. So I think, yeah, it was one of our customers who said that one day on a tour, saying, yeah, basically we're storytellers, we're entertainers, and kind of makes sense there.
You were talking about happy people, and I promised you that I would have two difficult questions. You only got one. The second one has got to do with those happy people. You're a CEO of a company. Is it happy employees or happy customers?
I don't make the choice. I think it's both. I think they're... you have the big question on where do you put your energy? Is it in your employees first or in your customers first? I think both are there because they believe in your promise, in what you are about, what makes you different than all the others. So I think it's purpose first. And if you stick to that promise and if you do that well, it will make your customers happy and it will make your employees happy. So I think it has to be consistent.
I fully agree. But I always get that question. If you talk about customer centricity, they say, well, what about employees? And it's an end-end story, absolutely. One more question. If you would be, it's not a question, it's an opportunity. The opportunity is, okay, there's the camera, there's potential customers sitting there. Why would they come and knock on your door? You already said we want them to be open-minded and curious. What do we have to offer them now in these specific, somebody is watching it, they're still in the middle of this, I call it the twilight zone, the zone in between two normals, the old normal not be fully dead and we don't know what the new normal is going to be. You guys call it the never normal. Yeah. We're in this never normal. Why would they have to come and knock on your door? What's your message to the potential audience? It's
a very good question, but I think you owe it to yourself. In any role you have, I think you have only one life, you have one business, and I think more and more people are realizing we only have one world. And keep it spicy, keep it fun, make sure it's worthwhile and that you're purposeful at the end of the day. And I think then if people are curious, they will be happy knocking on our door. And I think you mentioned customers, but also, I mean, governments. I think one of the things I was struck by in this kind of global crisis is that those nations, those continents are not talking to each other. And that was kind of striking me. I was like, okay, you have the connections, just keep it spicy and talk to each other.
Talk to each other.
So that was kind of surprising me. But I think everybody has the ownership and should have the agency to search for it themselves as well. So I would say search it, make it spicy.
Make it spicy. Now that's a nice ending.
I like cooking, you know.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much,
Thank
Julie.
you.
And good luck with 2020, being a mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just like you. We're all very curious what's going to happen next.
But again, we create it together. I mean, it's
exactly.
up to us. So we can be curious and looking for silver bullets, but in the end, let's just design it in the way that we want to.
It's up to us to write the script. This is it's not even a once in a lifetime, it's a once in the history.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an attitude. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Rick.